that look good enough? Good morning. Welcome to our webinar series, The Value of Clean. This is episode 4, Food Processing, 7 Steps to Clean, the Proven Path. I'm Bill McGarvey, Director of Training and Sustainability for Imperial Dade, and we want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today for what we hope will be an informative webinar for you today on food processing. If I could have the next slide up, please. Just real quickly about our Value of Clean series. The idea is to delve into the critical role that cleaning provides in enhancing business efficiency and reducing costs. Again, we've covered a number of different topics in the series, and we have a number more coming. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end of today's presentation. But joining me today, we have a fairly distinguished panel among some of our Imperial Dade folks here. Quite frankly, I think I'm the weak link on the call today. Our panel that will be providing information today has over 60 years of combined experience in our industry, and with particular emphasis on food processing. So first, let me introduce Jennifer Moradian. She is a sales consultant out of our Detroit Bowling Green area. Jennifer, again, has a number of years of experience, and she'll be providing some great information along the way today. Also on the call today is Joe Tehan. Joe, also bringing years of experience to the call. Joe is our VP of Services and Training and helps cover pretty much the eastern half of the United States in the services and training roles. And also joining me is my longtime sidekick, or maybe I'm his sidekick, I'm not sure which. John Thomas, our Director of Health and Wellness, will be here to also provide some of his expertise, coming to us, certainly from a microbiology background, but also a number of years in food processing. So as we get started today, just quickly, we hope that our series will help you and your staff, your team, to do these 3 things. 1, lead with integrity, understanding proper hygiene and following those practices, including hand hygiene and personal hygiene. But also to help equip for safety, to understand and procure and then use proper personal protective equipment. And then also to ensure sanitation, because at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about, making sure that all the products that get out to consumers are as safe as possible. So with that, I'm going to hand off the first part of our call today to John Thomas to discuss some food safety threats for us. So John, welcome and take it away.
Thank you, Bill. I've used many terms when I've discussed you. I've never used the term weak link. So again, I thank you. I appreciate your support. Again, touching on the points that Bill just made, as a former food microbiologist for food manufacturer, I'm well aware of the importance of effective sanitation and meeting those health standards and even regulatory requirements. And from that standpoint, we recognize that there are a number of threats that face our food supply and have to be dealt with by our food processors and manufacturers that are on this call today. And that's what we're here to talk about today, to look at those threats and ways to mitigate them in your process, in your operation. And when I use the term threats, I really talk about basically 3 different areas. That's those physical, chemical contaminants. There's been 12 product recalls year to date here in 2024 dealing with that. One that comes to mind is that lead contamination of applesauce products. It's been a pretty major one. Also, food allergens, as most processors now managing allergens within their operation has become extremely complex, and there's already been 29 product recalls dealing with that. And then what we're going to spend most of our time here talking about is biological contamination that results in foodborne illnesses. So far, year to date, there's been 30 product recalls on that category. Listeria monocytogenes is really one of the bigger ones. Salmonella, E. coli, and there's even been an outbreak of botulism associated with processing. So again, when we take a look at these threats, again, we want to make sure that we're, as manufacturers, we're dealing with them when I attend the National Food Safety Summit here next month, there's a lot of food manufacturers, grocery store chains, restaurant chains, et cetera, that are attending because these are topics of interest because they know that the impact of these threats and what it has on their business. Want to go to the next slide? So again, there's costs associated with these types of outbreaks, and we look at them when the most important is the human cost. Most businesses want to provide a wholesome, safe product to the marketplace because they want to avoid these types of impacts with, lost work, medical cost, disability, and some of these outbreaks actually do result in deaths. And then they all translate into business costs. There's productivity issues. The plants are shut down. Again, the impact on your customers, and then ultimately liability, and then the damage to brand and image. One that, over the past couple of years, it really is used as a reference there is the impact on Chipotle and in dealing with that nationwide issue that they had with regard to their produce. Again, most of the manufacturers they're concerned about these costs. And, this demonstrates the need for a comprehensive food safety plan, which, the components are as follows. Next slide, please. Again, for food safety today, we look at risk-based. We need to understand what those pathogens are that can really potentially impact our food product and our process. We want to be proactive. We want to anticipate that risk and to develop those cleaning and processing procedures that help minimize or eliminate that pathogen in the process. We need to be holistic today. It's just not what happens, in the packaging department in that manufacturing plant. It's all the way through the raw materials because, again, if we have highly contaminated raw materials, it becomes extremely difficult to control those through the process and eliminate that risk. And then lastly, we all know that there's a budget for everything, so we need to make sure that we do things that have the greatest impact on the program and on the problems, so that we can get the most return on that investment. So again, we start with taking a look at the risks, and for today's session, as we talk about, it's going to really be dealing with the pathogen risk. Next slide, please. And again, really looking at 5 major product categories. Ready-to-eat products, specifically meat and poultry products. Again, listeria is always a major concern. E. coli. We have also the Campylobacter jejuni and Bacillus cereus. So again, these would be types of pathogens we'd be working with. Milk and dairy products, especially raw and under-pasteurized products, which we're hearing a lot about. Again, listeria, salmonella, and again, Bacillus cereus would be issues there. Egg and egg products, and eggs used in a lot of different types of processes. Salmonella is really a major concern with that product. And then prepared salads, many processors and packer processors, commissaries, they're producing salads and other types of products that are not being heat treated. So again, that process is extremely critical because you have things like Staphylococcus aureus, again, E. coli and listeria, which can contaminate that and result in illnesses. And then lastly, you've got fruits and vegetables being processed in a lot of operations. Again, salmonella, and this is where your viral pathogens get to be a factor because they are transmitted by the people that are actually doing that cutting and slicing and packaging. And so that would be hepatitis A and norovirus, and again, E. coli. And just as a note on that, since I collected that data on outbreaks, just last week there was another one reported for salmonella in a pea product that was being packaged. And so again, there's been a major recall on that. So again, this is ongoing. We know the risk, so we need to come up with a risk-based safety plan to deal with that. And so taking a look at the next slide there with the type of safety plan. And as I said earlier, this will be dealing with from a cleaning and sanitizing standpoint as to as a part of the process. Again, we want to be able to validate, monitor, and verify. For those of you on the call that might be old enough, I know Bill probably remembers this, but President Reagan from many years ago had a famous quote about trust but verify. And again, we want to make sure that we are trusting the operation, but we do want to make sure we verify. And so when we talk about validation from a cleaning and sanitizing standpoint, we want to make sure that the right products are being used to deal with the soils that are being generated in that food processing plant. We also want to make sure that the right temperatures and times are being followed to make sure that the outcomes are, what are needed to, produce that product safely. And then throughout the process, we should be monitoring, again, concentration checks on the cleaner as well as the sanitizers. This is especially important with clean in place or CIP operations, where you're actually running that through a system. So again, checking those cleaning processes on a regular basis. And then verification. That's those tasks that we do at the end of the process, the cleaning operation, to make sure that we did achieve the levels of cleanliness that were needed to, again, process that food safely. One of those things is ATP measurements, ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Those levels can be measured and indicate really residual soils. And so it's well accepted within the food industry to use this process. And again, it can help assess the cleaning effectiveness, but it also can help identify contamination sources that may be impacting your product. And so, again, we talk about cleaning and removing those soils. What are the impact of that or the benefits of that? Going to the next slide. Thank you. Is really, again, we're looking to reduce that contamination, starting from the raw materials. Again, and then as the product is being produced through the process, we want to make sure we're preventing cross-contamination as much as possible, keeping that environment as healthy as possible. And that does help then maximize the efficiency of those sanitation processes and procedures. You want to make sure that you're getting the most from what you're investing into that program. And then all of this helps you meet the regulatory standards and requirements that all, whether it be FDA or USDA, there's expectations there. And then lastly, from these efforts, you really should be seeing, there's financial returns from reducing that risk, and then again, maintaining your product, productivity at the highest levels. At this point, to talk a little bit more about those cleaning and sanitizing processes, I'm going to be handing it off to my associate, Jennifer Moradian. Take it away, Jennifer.
Thank you. So really, we're ultimately cleaning for safety of the staff, our staff, and safety of the public. You can move to the next slide. So why should we prioritize cleaning for the staff and the public? Truly, some of the things that John was hitting on before, we don't need any negative attention. We don't want to be in the public eye. We want everybody to enjoy working for us, have a safe day at work, go home to their families, and put a great product out on the shelves. You can go to the next slide. So what are some of the things that we can do to make sure that we have a great, safe environment that's clean and we're putting the best products out there? Really, the first thing is be the role model, lead by example. So model with exemplary hygiene practices. Are we reminding our staff members to wash their hands for 20 seconds? Are we singing happy birthday twice? Are we making sure that our vendors that come in are following our SSOPs? Are they wearing jewelry? Are they wearing the proper clothes? Are you handing them a gown or an apron when they walk through your building? We want to minimize whatever's entering in our building as well. Number two, again, emphasize hand washing and personal cleanliness. So one of the big questions that I get asked in food processing is about E2 hand soaps versus E3 sanitizers, and what's the difference between a regular conventional soap, or do I have to have this? It really depends on who's doing your inspections of what they would like to see. But the question is, why not? Why wouldn't you give yourself an extra layer of protection by using an E2 hand soap, something that's dye-free, perfume-free? Really, all that's required is having a dispenser that's on the wall, having a paper towel, and a way to dispose of that. Number three, utilizing the appropriate PPE. So what gloves, what eye protection, what footwear are your employees being given to use? Really, slip and falls is the number one danger in the workplace. That goes across the board, especially where we're cleaning and we have wet environments, making sure people have the proper things to allow them to go to work safely is huge. And people have a choice of where they work now. Sanitation is not the most glamorous role out there. People want to enjoy where they're at, and they can leave in a heartbeat. Turnover is real, and it's like the biggest thing that people face in these environments. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we are doing the GHS training and that people understand the risks associated with the chemicals they're using. Are they using an acid product or a chlorine product? What is the sanitizer that they're using? And are you prepared in case there is something like an ammonia leak in your coolers and you only are using a chlorine-based product? You need to have a backup plan. Next slide. So this kind of just re-emphasizes how we're cleaning. Really, the first step is to remove soil load. That's going to get rid of the majority of your bacteria on its own. But then we have to rinse all the cleaning agents and then sanitize. That sanitizer is going to clean or going to sanitize 99.9% of the bacteria that is on those surfaces, but only the items that are listed on the label. So sometimes we'll pick some generic random thing and we're like, well, it's a sanitizer, but not all sanitizers are the same. Not all can be treated equally. Go to the next slide. The most important thing is really working with your local agencies to have a good plan in place, making sure that you're reviewing your HACCP plan and your SSOPs, and talk to your inspectors. They are your friend. They're not there to criticize you or attack you. They're there to help you protect your brand and use your vendors as a consultant. They're in a lot of different places. They are seeing a lot of different things and talking to people. So again, utilize all these people as support. Next slide. So we really need to focus on training. We can hit on the next slide here. Turnover being really the biggest issue in food processing plants. Of how do we train and how do we make sure that our staff knows what they're doing. I see a lot of my accounts doing a great job onboarding. We'll have a 3-day plan right when somebody starts up and they go through all of these things. The problem with that is everybody's crammed for a test before. And we need to make sure that we are re-educating our staff and retesting them to make sure they know what they're doing and how important their job is. What I like to see is a follow-up plan after 2 weeks, after 30 days, after 90 days, to make sure that they didn't just cram on that first day, pass the test, something's in their file, and we're good to go. We need to make sure that they're really practicing the actions that they learned in their first couple days of onboarding. Also, we need to make sure that our staff feels important. They are doing a really hard job, and it's not always glamorous. It's not ever glamorous to be cleaning in a food processing plant. So we need to make sure that we're doing the things to boost morale, that we're saying thank you, that we're saying good job, and we're providing them the tools to make their job easy. Lastly, you need to have detailed SSOPs. Really, you need to be familiar with them. I was in a plant the other day where one of the supervisors and the quality manager were having a debate on whether they had a SSOP for cleaning an auto scrubber. And I see plants are really good about having their SSOPs for every piece of equipment that is in the food processing area, but that applies to all areas in the facility. And there are vendors out there. We are a resource to be able to help you with these things. Be realistic in your SSOPs. You don't want to have one sole number as your target for titration. You need to have a range that is attainable throughout the shift. Next slide. So tact, time, agitation, concentration, and temperature. These are all the factors that play into cleaning. And you have to think of these as levers. So when one goes up, the other goes down. If you have a better method of agitating, it might take less time. If you have a product that's being used at the right concentration, it's going to work more effectively for you. And then knowing what temperature you're in. Are you cleaning a freezer? And what's the temperature of the water that you're mixing with your products? I see people using hot water all the time to clean, and what it's doing is making the chemical less effective. So reading the label and understanding what product you're using. When we look at this all together, I think of one customer that I had that brought me in to help with their sanitation. And really, their process was an all-night process, a huge facility, and they would spray too large of areas at once. And what was happening was the chemical was staying on the surface for too long, and it was adhering to the surface instead of releasing the soils that they wanted to release. So they were spending a lot of extra time scrubbing and cleaning to remove that chemical. And really, all they needed was some guidance of saying, okay, let's spray these smaller sections and create a block schedule for you for cleaning throughout your shift. And it was amazing to see they were able to take their nighttime sanitation process from 8 hours to 6 hours. Next slide. So really going back to the basics of cleaning, there are 7 steps. We can move forward. The 7 steps to cleaning, we want to make sure that we remove all the physical debris and soil that we can by vacuuming, sweeping, and making sure that we're using the right tools, the right colors, in the right environments. This includes the ceilings and walls. So having a vacuum system that you're able to get up on top of the pipes that are running through your building, the light fixtures. Also within that dry scraping, you want to make sure that once you are applying liquid, that your drains are clear so that chemical and residual water can flow freely to the drain. The next step would be pre-rinsing. You want to utilize hot water during this step. This is where hot water really does make a difference. Grease breaks down at 135 degrees. If you're trying to remove some of those things, that hot water will truly help release, and water pressure will release. With water pressure, you need to be careful going around your drains. You don't want to use pressure that's going to kick any soils back up out of the drain and cause issues within your plant. The third is chemical foaming. You want to make sure that you're using the right detergent, that it's at the right concentration, that those are being titrated on a regular basis. So are you dealing with protein, starch, fats, or dairies? Everything is going to have a different product that should be used for these specific purposes. Then we want to rinse again, making sure that we're removing all the chemical that we use, any loose additional particles of food that we were able to get out, making sure that we're really paying attention to all those hidden niches. And we want to make sure that throughout this process, our electrical is properly covered and that we planned before we started spraying everything down. The fifth step would be inspection. You want to verify the cleanliness, conduct tests. This is where we're using an ATP meter. We also need to be keeping records at this point. Are you using software to keep your records? Are you still using paper and clipboard. These are the tools that really can help you determine any process issues in order to continue to get better and more efficient. Then the sixth step is sanitizing, applying a quat, a PAA, or an alcohol to all surfaces for that last sanitizing step. Are you using the right product? Are you organic? Do you have special situations that we need to consider? And then the last seventh step is to reassemble. Reassembling your product, your equipment, making sure that it's cleaned, and sanitizing all your tools that you used properly. Brooms, mop handles, all of those types of things, they need to be sanitized and stored properly to be ready for your next shift. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Joe.
Good morning, everyone. Let's start off with basic tools needed. And of course, employee safety is the most important. So we'll start with PPE. And it's literally from head to toe, starting with hair nets and beard nets, goggles and shields, aprons, lab coats, smocks, gowns, sleeve covers, shoe and boot covers, earplugs for safety. And it's not only to protect your employees, but it's also to protect your brand. One of the things that you see, and although not a requirement by standards, is you'll see two colors in most food processing facilities, a white PPE setup and a blue PPE setup. Typically, blue isn't found naturally in foods. So seeing a blue item in food production tells you that it's not what it's supposed to be. It's likely a piece of something. So it's easier to find a blue item than it is a white item. And on the other side, your QA people typically walk around in white because it's easier to judge clear based off the white. Hopefully that makes sense. And one of the biggest tips I can talk about for PPEs is to make sure that it's comfortable for your people. I've been guilty of it myself. If PPE isn't comfortable and it doesn't fit your people properly, they're more likely to either ditch or modify their PPE equipment to be a little more comfortable. Next slide, please. Some other tools, containment systems, and you'll see a picture in a little bit of a containment system to manage spills and prevent spreads, because there is a potentially chemical mixing should there be an accident. So you want to contain everything from a gallon to a 55 or even a tote size container of chemicals. And then, of course, your SCS books, your SSOP books, all which are required for your SQF audits. And SQF stands for saved quality food. In every food processing facility, it gets an SQF audit. Next slide, please. And some of the basic tools, Jennifer mentioned brooms, brushes, squeegees, and shovels. I'm a huge fan of color coding things. What you don't want to do is use the same broom, mop, and squeegee in the restroom that you would in your food processing facility. Color coding those items makes it easier to separate these items to potentially reduce the cross-contamination. Chemical testing kits, whether they're something simple like quat strips or test strips, full titration kits, or APT meters to check residual chemicals, soil, all those things, and to make sure things are properly calibrated. In addition to ATP, there's also allergen meters, things like that help keep your facility safe. And outside of the things that you typically use to clean, there's items that are cross-function throughout the rest of your facilities, things like auto scrubbers and sweepers. Understanding that productivity is likely your highest cost item. Something like an auto scrubber or floor sweeper can help speed up productivity and ultimately reduce your cost to clean. Next slide, please. And here are some of the dispensing systems that we see. Dispensers come wall-mounted, mobile. You'll see a containment system down the bottom. There's a little yellow tubs. So that 55-gallon drum, God forbid something punctures it, that will hold 55 gallons of product. So it keeps it from spilling in case two punctures or spills happen. It keeps your detergents away from your acids, your alkalis. and your chlorines away from other things as well. And there's great dispensing equipment from a multitude of different manufacturers. So there's a few different ones hanging there. Ultimately, they come hydro-powered, which is water, air-driven, and some even come electric. So there are some different options. Next slide, please. And equipment doesn't have to be expensive. Here's a couple options here. Something from as simple as a sanitizing mat where you put a sanitizer in the mat and you walk through. Super inexpensive, cost effective, versus a door foam, a little bit more money. It sprays a shaving cream like foam onto the floor where you folks walk through. And then something even a little bit more expensive and higher end is a shoe sanitizer where you put your shoes in there and they sanitize your feet. And it keeps from bringing germs and microbes from one section of the building to the next, and should be found in any doorway that enters your food processing facility. A couple other options. On the right-hand side down the bottom, you'll see a portable foamer. So that one happens to be air-driven, 20 gallons, so you can move around the facility and spray. Next to that, to the left, is a handheld pump. They do the same job. They produce foam. One does it super inexpensively, and the other one a little bit more cost efficient due to productivity, but a higher cost for the dispenser itself. Next slide, please. And Jennifer talked about the 7 principles of cleaning a little bit ago. There's also 3 principles where we clean dry to wet. So think if you're a bakery, you clean up the dry soil first before you get into the dough. So you're picking up breadcrumbs and flour before you go to dough. You go from high to low, with really one exception. When you're foaming, you want to start at the bottom and build a base up the wall. So you want to do a base layer and kind of layer that up the wall. It helps with dwell time, contact time, and helps really get the facility cleaner with less product. These happen to be clean in place units, so you can drag them across. I say drag, you can bring them across the facility right to the unit that you're cleaning. It helps, again, your productivity. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Bill McGarvey, who's going to finish up with questions and answers.
All right, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Jennifer and John as well. This has been really informative, I think. And I was remiss at the beginning of our webinar to remind folks to type in their questions or comments in the chat or Q&A. So we don't have any in there just now. Would like to give folks a moment to type them in if they do have any. But one of the key things that I really want to stress, I think you've seen we have some expertise at your disposal here at Imperial Dade, and Jennifer, John, and Joe are just an example of that. We've got a lot of very knowledgeable sales consultants and support behind them available to you, as well as wall charts and training aids to help reinforce the training that is so important, so critical in this world. Again, not seeing any questions just yet, so if good, let's move on to the next slide. We want to be mindful of folks' time here.
Actually, we do have a couple of questions here.
Do we? Okay.
First question was, can Imperial Dade help with setting up a food safety plan?
Any of our panelists want to take that?
I'll take that. Yes, I think we can assist. I mean, again, when you look at a food safety plan, it's fairly comprehensive. We would work with our actual, in the case of sanitation, work with our sanitation, our chemical supplier partner, and use their expertise, and we could provide information to help complete it. Without a question, I'm sure Jennifer's been asked to contribute information for her customers, and we could, definitely do that. We're not in the process of actually being able to come in and establish a food safety plan for an operation. Obviously, that's an undertaking for that company itself.
And the next question. Oh, go ahead, Jennifer.
I just wanted to add in, that's what we're here for, to help. So as you have those plans and there are questions that come up and you're scratching your head saying, what do I do? What do we have any suggestions for this? We can come take a look at what you're facing to give some suggestions so you can add that information in and point you in the right direction.
Great.
Great. Thank
The
you.
next question is, would you recommend using a third-party service or lab to test your environment periodically on levels of bacteria and contaminants?
Wow, a lot of microbiology questions here. Yes, I guess, right, depending upon the type of operation, uh, your type of lab. Most food laboratories do not like handling pathogens, so they mostly outsource any type of actual end product testing of that nature. They would, outsource that to an established laboratory. But in terms of actual processing, the ATP measurements that were mentioned are easily done by on-site quality control. That's actually the best way to do that because they're part of the team and they're able to you get readings right away. You can almost pass or fail the operation right there when the equipment is tested. So again, that would be somebody in-house. In terms of other microbiological testing, I think it would depend upon the type of product. Some of that can be done, obviously, with your larger food processors. They have fairly extensive laboratories and actually can do what they call indicator organism testing to see, use that as a guidepost as to whether they're achieving what they want.
Okay, those were the two questions. If anyone thinks of any other questions after this session is over, you can still chat in this meeting chat list, and we can catch those and respond to you individually.
All right.
Barbara, I see one more from Lindsay.
Okay, I do not see it. Maybe that's in the chat.
So
It is.
I actually, so yes, it was actually asking if we go into more depth on specific products, chemicals should be used to clean based on the soil type. For example, it was mentioned starches and proteins. What chemicals should be used for which soils?
So I can
Sounds like a
jump
Bill
in.
McGarvey question.
Say that again.
Sounds like a Bill McGarvey question.
Actually, I will defer to Jennifer because she seemed willing and able. So
Okay.
by all means, Jennifer.
Really, I think that having a representative come into your plant and seeing what your soil load is the best route to go. We deal with a bunch of different manufacturers. So instead of specifically naming one particular item, just reach out to your local rep. If you need help figuring that out, we can help you with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you
If I
so much
could,
for that.
some of it goes back to your high school chemistry class as well. Cleaning is really chemistry 101. If you remember your pH system, most soils are acidic. So when you're cleaning something like a starch or a protein that is on the acidic line, you want to use an alkali there. Depending on which product it is, whether it's a sticky soil or if it's a dry soil, that chemistry piece plays a big piece there. And Jennifer's absolutely right. Bring one of us in. We'll gladly help you out, find the right product for your facility. And we have not only our group of 3, but hundreds of people across the country for Imperial Day that can help you out with that.
Now, here is one as well coming in from an email. The question is, how do you handle it if your supervisor's urge to start up quickly doesn't give you enough time to clean? How can you navigate that?
I guess as a part of this food safety plan, management has to take that lead. Obviously, expectations are, production over sanitation, then there could be impacts on the risk associated with that. And again, that really comes from management. Management has to establish, what those guidelines are, and there's an SOP, and you meet that SOP. If they want to deviate from that, then obviously then there's potential, negative results that come from that. Should it be up to the supervisor? I mean, it really should be, management should be driving those expectations.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all, and thank you for those questions. So real quick, our next webinars in the series next month, we will be featuring spotless hospitality, polishing the guest experience. And then in June, we'll be talking about bloodborne pathogen safety. It's an annual requirement for many of our customers, and we'll be trying to provide some information to help you make sure that training is meaningful but is accomplished for all your folks. So, could I have the next slide, please? We just want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend the webinar today. We hope you found it informative. Also want to give a shout out real quick to our webinar sponsors, which would be the Spartan Chemical Company and Kimberly-Clark Professional, who have helped make this webinar possible. For those of you who maybe have some colleagues or your employees that maybe you want them to hear some of this webinar, it has been recorded, and we will be making it available in the future so that you can actually get that recording and listen to it again or share it with others. So with that, again, I want to thank you all for your time today. I hope you find the webinar series helpful, and please feel free to reach out to your Imperial Dade local sales consultants or branch if you have some specific questions, concerns, or maybe even some topics for upcoming webinars. We're certainly open to suggestion there too. So again, thank you very much for your time today, for attending. We thank you, all of you that are Imperial Dade customers. We thank you for your business, and we want to wish everyone a very happy, healthy, and successful day. So long now.